name is Danica Hayes, and the night my life got decided, it happened over a chipped kitchen counter and 5 envelopes I had dreamed about since middle school. Stanford, MIT, Princeton, Yale, Harvard. Full rides, all of them. I was still in my diner uniform, grease on my sleeves, when I lined the letters up like they were made of glass. My hands were shaking so hard, they were full pages. I managed to whisper, almost to myself, I did it. That was when my sister snatched the stack right out of my hands. I did not even have time to breathe before she fed the first acceptance letter into the shredder. The sound of the blades chewing my future was louder than anything I had ever heard. College is useless, she said, eyes locked on mine while another letter turned into white confetti. You want to help this family? Get a job. I turned to my mom, waiting for her to stop, to say something, anything. She just folded her arms and nodded toward the shredder like it was a trash can. We are only investing in the kid and bringing money now, she said. You have 2 weeks to find full-time work, or you are out of this house. By the time the last Harvard letter disappeared, my scholarships were gone, my future was gone, and so was any doubt about what I meant. I did not scream. I did not cry. I just watched, memorizing every word, every smirk, every sound. Because if you stay with me until the end, you will see exactly how a girl whose future died in a shredder made the people who destroyed her pay for every single strip of paper. I did not sleep. The sound of the shredder was playing, like my brain was stuck in a road. Every time I moved, I saw the Stanford seal turning into strips of paper. The funny thing is, they thought they had poured my own. What they never bothered to notice was that I had scanned every single letter taken a ride, and uploaded them to my school drive, then forwarded copies to the guidance counselor. I did that because I knew, deep down, that if anyone tried to sabotage me, it would come from themselves. My sister's name was Courtney, my mom was Linda. That night, the 2 of them sat on the couch in the living room, watching some loud reality show with nothing to do, like they had not just taken a chance into the future. From my room, I could hear them laughing and the studio audience. I packed them up, 3 pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, my laptop, coffee stains in the cupboard, and the tip money I had been stashing inside. Crumpled bills from presidents and stocking shelves at the bookstore. It was not much, but it was mine. Around midnight, I opened my email and typed a single line to the only adult who had ever treated my brain like it was worth something. My chemistry teacher, Miss Barton. I told her what happened, attached the scanned letters again, and asked one question. If my family destroys the originals, do I still have a chance? I did not expect her to answer that late, but she did. 10 minutes later, she replied that the universities already had digital records, that the letters could be reissued, and that if I needed a place to land in Boston while I figured things out, she had a pull-out couch and a key with my name on it. If they are willing to throw away what you earned, she wrote, you do not owe them your future. At 2 a.m., I slipped my backpack over my shoulders and walked past the living room. Courtney was asleep with her phone in her hand, some sponsored makeup video still looping on the screen. My mom was snoring in her recliner, an empty wine glass on the floor. I stood there for a full minute, waiting to feel guilty. Nothing came. I left my house key on the kitchen counter next to the dead shredder and walked out into the cold, connected air. The bus station, it was smelled like stale coffee and exhaust. I bought a one-way ticket to Boston, shaking hands, sat in the back row, and turned my phone on before the bus even pulled away. No dramatic goodbye text, no long speech, just one quiet promise to myself as the lights of my neighborhood blurred confident, precise, absolutely certain that I belonged in those lecture halls. She explained the situation, sent verified copies of my acceptance emails, forwarded my transcripts. One by one, the schools confirmed what she had already told me. My future did not live or die in that shredder. The records were digital, the offers still valid. When the dust finally settled, I chose MIT. It was the best financial aid package, the strongest biochemistry program, and it meant I could stay in Boston, close to the one adult who had proven she was in my corner. The next years blurred into a relentless loop of lecture halls, late-night lab sessions, and side jobs nobody on campus ever saw. In the mornings, I was the kid asking too many questions in organic chemistry. At night, I was stocking shelves, wiping down tables, and counting crumpled dollar bills under the flickering light of a back room. While other students flew home for Thanksgiving, I stayed in Cambridge, eating instant noodles on that same futon, checking my bank balance and my lab results like they were equally important measurements of success. Somewhere around my junior year, a postdoc doctor, Park's lab let me help with a small project on autoimmune markers. I watched as fluorescent bands on a gel lit up exactly where we had predicted, and something clicked so hard in my chest it almost hurt. For the first time, I saw a version of my life where I was not just escaping something, I was building something. I stayed for grad school, then a postdoc, then a position at a research institute in Stockholm that specialized in immune system disorders. The winters there were brutal, the kind of cold that cut through every layer. But inside the lab, we were on fire. My team and I mapped out a pathway that helped explain why the body sometimes turns on itself, why people end up trapped in their own skin. The work led to a new kind of treatment, one that cut flare-ups in half for patients who had tried everything else. Papers advanced, then patents, then, eventually, money. Royalties from the drug deal wired into an account I had opened under my own name. No co-signers, no family. I kept my lifestyle simple. A small apartment, cheap furniture, the same beat-up sneakers I had worn as a grad student. On the morning the Nobel Committee called, I was in the lab in the same faded hoodie I had worn during my qualifying exams, squinting at a spreadsheet. My phone lit up with an unfamiliar number from Sweden, and when the voice on the other end said the words, "You have been awarded," my first thought was not about history or speeches or headlines. It was a flash of white dad across a kitchen counter in Connecticut, the sound of a shredder chewing through Harvard stationery, and the quiet promise I had made on a bus in the middle of the night. On the night the world found out what my name meant, Courtney and Linda were sitting in a kitchen that looked nothing like the one I had left. The counters were peeling laminate, the overhead light buzzed like a dying fly, and a stack of unopened medical bills leaned against a chipped ceramic fruit bowl. Courtney was hunched over her cracked phone, trying to sell a sequined jacket on a live stream to a handful of bored viewers. Linda stirred powdered cheese into a pot of boxed macaroni with the kind of tired focus you only see in people who have spent their whole lives stretching groceries to the end of the month. The TV in the corner was on more for noise than anything else, set to a news channel they barely watched. They were mid-argument over whether to pay the electric bill or the minimum on a credit card when the anchor's tone shifted and the words, "Live from Stockholm," floated into the room. Courtney rolled her eyes, ready to tune it out, until the anchor said my name. Dr. Danica Hayes. For a second, she thought she had misheard. Then the screen cut to a grand hall, chandeliers blazing, cameras flashing. I was walking down a red carpet aisle in a simple dark gown, my hair pinned up, a small medal gleaming at my collarbone. The ticker at the bottom of the screen spelled it out for them in brutal, crisp letters. Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Linda's wooden spoon slipped out of her hand and clattered against the stove. Courtney froze, the sequined jacket halfway off its hanger. She knew that face. She knew the way my jaw tightened when I was trying not to show too much. She had seen it once, a lifetime ago, in the reflection of a microwave door as she fed my acceptance letters into a shredder. In Stockholm, I climbed the steps to the stage and took the medal from the king's hand, the applause washing over me like a sound from another planet. When they asked me to speak, I did not talk about genius or luck or destiny. I talked about a girl in a cramped kitchen whose 5 letters to a different life were destroyed by the people who were supposed to protect her. I did not say, my mother, or my sister. I said, someone I loved, and people who feared what they did not understand. I talked about how, for a long time, I believed their voices more than my own. How I almost stayed small. Then I talked about teachers, mentors, the strange things we believe. As I said, but someone used just to flash old photos they found in university archives. Me in the MIT lab. Me clutching a phone. Me standing beside my department. Both of us laughing in front of the whiteboard mornings. Back in that dingy kitchen, Courtney grabbed the remote and turned up the volume. Like Thompson needed the sound of a change machine stereo, Linda shook her head, whispering no, over and over, as if she could will the broadcast to belong to some other family. On screen, I said one last line, the one that would play on repeat the next time I heard it. I said that sometimes the things you try to work with each other down are the exact reason you're going to get the audience stood and clapped. In a silent apartment covered in photographs. My sister and my mother watched me become so and for the first time, they could the email started less than 24 hours after the ceremony. At first, I thought they were just the usual flood you get and your name jumps from academic journals to the front page. But then I saw the subject line. So proud of you, sis. The exclamation mark was what they heard. Courtney's message was 3 screens long, a table mixing nostalgia and selective amnesia. She wrote about how she had always known I would do something big, how she used to brag about me to her followers, how life and destiny had gotten me here. There, all that choked just to be a piece of wrapped around my institute finger. A paragraph that I overread like dangerous things to go funny. A gentle reminder that Nobel winners receive like millions, right? She signed off with, family takes care of family. We just need a little help to get back on our feet. Love you. An hour later, a voicemail from Linda appeared in my inbox, forwarded by the lab's main line. Her voice was older, raspier, but the rhythm was exactly the same. She started with tears, telling me she had watched the broadcast and almost had a heart attack from pride. Then, without pausing, she rewrote history. She said she had only pushed me to work because she didn't want me to get hurt with disappointment. That shredding those letters was tough love, something I didn't understand. By the time she got to the part about the medical bills and the stress and the doctors, my jaw hit. I listened to the whole thing, every manipulative sigh and carefully timed statement, then deleted it. I answered Courtney with one word. week later, he sent me a packet of public records he had pulled. Courtney and Linda were drowning in debt. Maxed out credit cards, payday loans, a car note in default, months of unpaid rent on crumbling two-bedroom houses. They were not just broke, they were rich. I stared at the list of creditors, feeling mixed emotions that had almost looked like pity, almost. Then, a month after that, an email from Marcus's inbox stressed out security statements. They specialized in buying bad debts on house symptoms, bundling lies to keep one year to all price I take off their hands was less than what my patents generated on a slow quarter. Marcus forwarded the message to me with a single line. If you want complete silence and complete control, this is one way. I looked at him. For a long minute, I just sat there in my Stockholm office, under the dull and gray thinking about the shredded stack of letters I once left to paycheck. They had always removed money Fine. If that was the language they spoke, I was finally fluent enough to answer them. The conference room in Marcus Reed's patent office looked like something out of a movie I would never have been able to afford a ticket to if I was handed. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a long glass table that showed everything. A view of the city so high up, they almost impossible to view. I sat in the car and folded in front of me, and my Nobel pen tucked under my blouse. The blue metal pressing against my skin reminded me why I was there. Marcus stood by the door and checked his watch. They are here, he said finally. And for a second I felt that old familiar level of years. Then the door opened, and my past walked in wearing cheap Courtney gave me first 3 inches of heel on shoes she could not keep on, a knockoff design bag hanging from her arm. Her hair looked like she had tried to style it the way she used to for brand deals. But the spin and the design to Linda followed me, leaning a little on the doorframe, clutching her purse like something was going to rip it away. Their eyes lit up when they saw the room. The suit on Marcus. I could see that happening. She dropped a thick book on the table. Papers filled halfway in. We brought everything, she added, tapping the stack. Bills, payment plans, ideas for how you can help us reset. Once we get caught up, we can show everyone what a strong family looks like. I let them down. They painted a picture where they were the struggling heroes, and I was the golden uncle. The solution that would make all their bad choices disappear. When they finally ran out of breath, I slid the folder in front of me across the glass toward them. You're late, I said quietly. Those debts are not what they used to be. Courtney frowned, pulling out the top document. Her eyes moved over the lines, confusion knitting her forehead, then tightening into something ugly. The first page was a summary, stressed asset, listing every account under their names. The second page was a sign agreement. New creditor, Dr. Danica Hayes. What is this? She asked, her voice rising. Marcus answered for me. It means, he said, smooth and calm, that every dollar you owe on every account in that stack is now owed to your sister. The banks do not own you. She does. Linda shook her head so hard her earrings rattled. You cannot do that. You cannot just buy people's lives. when you had the power and I did not.
25 là hết bút
Poor is not what you did to me. Marcus laid one last document on the table, a draft restraining order. Given the pattern of harassment and the threats in your recent messages, he said, Dr. Hayes has grounds to request that you cease all contact. If you continue, this will be fine. You will not be allowed near her home, her workplace, or any public events. Linda started to cry then, loud and messy, the way she used to when a bill collector called during dinner. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back, folding my fingers into my lap before she could touch me. Security, who had been waiting discreetly in the hall, stepped in when Courtney's voice climbed into a shout. They guided them out of the room while Courtney screamed about betrayal and blood and karma. When the door finally closed and the conference room went quiet, I stood and walked to the window. The city spread out below like a circuit board, humming with 1,000 lives I would never know. My reflection in the glass looked calm, but my heart was pounding. Justice, I realized, did not always look like handcuffs or prison. Sometimes it looked like a signature on the right line, a choice not to save the people who once took pleasure in watching you drown. In the weeks after that meeting, things unfolded exactly the way the paperwork said they would. The management company posted the notice on Courtney and Linda's door, and 3 days later their neighbors watched as they hauled their lives into the back of a borrowed pickup truck, a stained couch, and mismatched boxes stacked on top of one another. They ended up in a smaller, cheaper apartment on the edge of a town no one brags about living in. Then, eventually, in the anonymous gray of a state housing complex after the bankruptcy filings went through, someone from a tabloid tried to spin the story into a headline about a heartless Nobel winner who evicted her own family. But there are limits to how far a narrative like that goes when your tearful interviews can be matched, line for line, with public records of harassment and the clip of you feeding your little sister's future into a shredder playing in the background of her Nobel speech. I refused every offer to tell my side for money. I did not need to justify my boundaries to strangers. The only public statement I made in Stockholm was the same one I kept repeating to myself in private. Survival is not ingratitude, and saying no to people who hurt you is not ingratitude. When the prize money and the royalties from my drug continued to grow, I started something my 18-year-old self could not have imagined in her wildest and loneliest dreams. The foundation called the Second Chance Fund. It offers scholarships, emergency housing, and small payment grants to kids whose families require standing only men and the class of the first time I sat talking with a 17-year-old girl to know his life, listening to her describe her father breaking down in marriages and things she wanted her lying on his phone. I felt the most inside her. I handed her a phone with a scholarship letter inside and told her that no one ever worried of your success. Some nights, when the lab was quiet and the city outside my window was just a blur of lights, I would think about Courtney and Linda. I did not stalk their social media or ask Marcus for updates, but occasionally their names would float past in public filings or a news alert.